Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Living in the West, a series of episodes where we look into the lives of the Muslim minorities living in the West. We looked at the social interaction, their social life. We looked into the economical dimension. And now we're entering the arena of politics. One may say one of the most important arenas for the Muslim minorities. I have with me Sheikh Haytham Al-Haddad from the Muslim Research and Development Foundation from the United Kingdom, an organisation and think tank which looks into providing solutions for these Muslims living in the West. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sheikh, in previous episodes we touched upon the politics and the importance of politics for this mass of Muslims, and we touched slightly upon the issue of voting. I'd like to start here. The issue of voting, Sheikh, how important is the involvement for Muslim minorities in the West?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. We mentioned in the previous episode that it is important for Muslims to be involved in the political process, but we said that each community should evaluate the situation carefully. And that's why from the right beginning we said that it is very important for each community to come together to discuss their issues and to draw a vision for what they want to achieve. And this is part of it, because if they are discussing the political involvement, then they will come up with a better judgment. Now, this issue of voting, it is very important for Muslims to evaluate their position and their strength in the political process. And as we said before, that there are different levels. Sometimes Muslims are very strong in some localities, and they are not that strong on a governmental level. This has to be taken into account. The other thing, Muslims should be very careful not to side openly with the weakest side. For example, if there is Party A, Party B, and Party A is the weakest and is going to lose anyway, but it might fight for some Muslim rights, and Party B is not fighting for the Muslim rights but is going to win anyway. It seems clearly that it is going to win anyway. We don't want to mention examples and names because that might be a little bit sensitive for some people and some people involved in politics. Now, by Muslims allying themselves with the weakest party, I think that is a wrong position they take. They have to be very diplomatic in approaching this political process. Similarly, once we talk about voting, how to vote, when to vote, and it depends on the type of democracy. For example, the proportional democracy is different from the representation democracy. And that's why in some countries Muslims were advised to have one voice because then they can push for one party. In some other areas, Muslims were advised to vote for the best MP for their area, irrespective of the party. For example, if Party A or B, in area 1, Party A is better for them, the MP from Party A is better for them, but in area 2, party B is better for them based on the nature of democracy running in that country, then they should select accordingly. That's why Muslims have to be fully aware of the political process. Even if they decide not to be involved, if they decided to abstain from that, and they should evaluate whether their abstention from voting will help to consider the political process failing or not. If that is the situation, then they might decide to abstain from voting. Or by abstention from voting, they want to send a powerful message to the government that Muslims are against what is happening, and that's why they are taking that stance, then that position can be taken. So what I am saying here is each group of Muslims, each community should evaluate the situation, which means that this notion of participation in the political process is considered to be anti-Islamic or kufr or haram. That is not true. Why? Because as we said earlier, that the political process is going anywhere. And here let me clarify, what is kufr when we talk about the democracy? What is kufr? And why we say that it is allowed for Muslims to be involved. What is kufr in the democratic process is that the leader himself, if he is a Muslim and he has a choice to run this country by the law of Allah Jalla wa Ala, or to run this country by any other law, and he did not run this country according to the law of Allah Jalla wa Ala, then this is kufr, because it is negating the ayah وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Okay, it is negating the implicit meaning of hukum mentioned in this ayah, and it is negating the ayah إِنِ الْحُكْمُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ. Now, but if you as a citizen, you don't have an alternative, either party A or party B will be in power. You are not the one to decide how this country is going to run. Then you have nothing to do with the anti-Islamic process. You have nothing to do with it. You are not participating in the sin that is taking place in the anti-Islamic process. This has to be clear, because so many people, especially young people, think that by being involved in the political process, you are involved in haram. No, I am not involved in haram. The haram is there. I am trying to minimize it. And whether I was involved in it or I was not involved in it, the haram is covering my head. Means one of the parties is going to win.
Okay, how deep can you go into the political process of voting? How deep can a person go? I mean, like you said, there's different levels, aren't there? There's a local level, there's higher government, and there's even a level of being part of government. How deep do you encourage Muslims to go then?
See, I have to be careful here, because, as I say, different countries have different situations, different types of democracies, okay, have different rulings. We have to be very careful, and that's why we need some fuqaha, some scholars, to discuss each situation. And the Muslims in each country should study their situation. Take, for example, the issue of being an MP.
Okay.
We were talking about voting, but we haven't talked about being an MP, a member of parliament. Now, what is the difference? We have to be clear about this. Voting, you are not the one who is legislating. Okay? You are choosing one of two. And see, you are selecting. You are not legislating. You are not pushing a certain legislation. And even if someone were to say you are pushing for a certain legislation, if I don't push for that legislation, other legislation will win.
Which is worse off for the Muslim community.
Which is worse for the Muslim community. And see, from the practical life, if you select something, it doesn't mean that you are endorsing it fully. Many people, the sick person might take medicine. Does he like medicine? No. He is taking medicine because he is forced to. He doesn't have any other alternative. If a sick person have some certain illnesses in one of his limbs, he might have that limb amputated. Does that mean that he likes this to be amputated? Does that mean that he endorses this amputation? No. He is endorsing what is the benefit of that process. So we have to be careful. So voting is different from being an MP. Being an MP, you are legislating. You are being part of the legislation process. That's why we have to look at it from this perspective, not from the perspective of general participation in the political process.
And what's the condition then for the person who enters this? Because before entering into this field of politics, it was to get the greater good. Some people may turn around and say that this is the Muslims playing games. They only want good for themselves, really. As an MP, you have to have good for everybody, not just for the Muslim community. True?
That is true. That's why I'm not in a position now to conclude any ruling regarding being an MP. It is a big matter, and we need to discuss this issue carefully, and that's why we are appealing to the fiqh councils to discuss such issues, being an MP. And as I said, being an MP is totally different from participating in voting or in the election process.
Jazakallah khair. We can end this process. We're going to go to a short break and return in a couple of minutes. Please do stay with me in Living in the West. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Back to the Prophet. Join Sheikh Amar in the program Back to the Prophet, wherein he teaches us practical lessons from the Prophet's life and how this can help us to overcome our challenges in the present.
We talk about the life example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, seeking guidance for ourselves. In the early days after the revelation of the Holy Quran, the Muslims were greatly persecuted. So much so that quite a few Muslims had to leave Arabia and migrate to Africa to live among Ahl Kitab, Christian people who followed the gospel of Christ.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Living in the West. Sheikh Haytham, we're on the topic of politics, and a very important point in this discussion of voting and participating in politics is the issue of citizenship. Many people say that being a citizen of a country, you have to participate in this. This is one of the prerequisites of being a citizen. What comments do you have on this?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. To be honest, I don't think that this statement is an accurate statement, because many non-Muslims do not participate in the political process. And those who attain the nationality or citizenship of any country, any Western country or any non-Muslim country, they are not obliged by law to participate in the political process. Again, let us stress on the fact that the main aim behind participation in the political process in any country, and in particular in non-Muslim country, is to what? To better the situation of Muslims and to better the situation of the whole society from an Islamic perspective. Again, we have to be careful to better the situation of the society as a whole from an Islamic perspective, not just to better the situation of the society full stop. No, we are governed by the law of Allah Jalla wa Ala in all our steps, in our aims, in our objectives. That's why when we should better the situation of any society, it should be according to Islam and from an Islamic perspective.
Okay, then so how do we now tackle this issue as we've seen the importance of it, this benefiting of society through the benefit to Islam and the Muslims? Okay, how do we now address this to the community level? Because the community has an obligation upon pushing forward this to the younger members. As you know, politics doesn't start from the older generation, it has to be from the younger generations. What obligations or tracks does the community have to do to bring the youth into politics?
Yeah, this is a very valid point actually, because see, what we see now is, as you rightly said, that the older generation is not very interested in politics. Even, to be honest with you, when they get into politics, they make so many mistakes, because politics in non-Muslim countries is different from politics in Muslim countries.
So they come in with the baggage from another continent.
Exactly,
maybe.
Exactly. So we have to be careful. Actually, they have to educate the younger generation to be involved in politics. And the younger generation should be more aware of the political process. And that's why we are encouraging younger or young generations to study these topics, to study politics, to study economics, to study humanitarian subjects, to study social studies. What we have seen in some European countries is the fact that the younger generation, because they were influenced by their parents or the older generation, they focus on technical studies or studying medicine or so. They don't study these social or human studies.
The humanities, the arts.
Humanities, yeah. While in the West, the main players are those who study humanities, those who studied politics, those who studied law. Maybe it is good to mention that studying law is very important. I remember when I arrived to Britain long time ago, many people, many young people used to ask this question: is it allowed to study law or not? Maybe we can take this question and we elaborate on it further. So these topics are quite important. And look at the Jewish community in most of the Western countries. You will see that they are specialized in law, in politics, humanities, etc. So the older generation should push the younger generation to study that. Actually, they need to sponsor some intelligent students, some intelligent Muslims to study in these fields.
So the Awqaf comes involved again, the endowment, the community putting these projects forward.
Exactly. Why don't we have, for example, an award for the best Muslim student in politics, the best Muslim student in economics? Why don't we have awards or prizes for that? And as we are talking, and maybe this episode will be seen by Muslims and non-Muslims, Muslims in different countries, we are appealing for some rich Muslims to sponsor some young Muslims in non-Muslim countries to study these topics. We have seen some rich people or organizations sponsoring some Muslims to study Sharia. That is very important. But we also want some organizations to sponsor some practicing young Muslims to study these topics and to give awards for them. And this, by doing this, we are establishing the principle of one ummah. Muslims in Muslim countries, they are helping Muslims in non-Muslim countries.
Okay, so would I be correct in saying that this short-term goal, or this first goal of multiculturalism that we spoke about, it's implicitly linked to pushing our youth into politics, because by moving them into politics, they are working towards this multicultural society, or they're working within the society?
This is true, but see, we haven't said that we are pushing the youth to study politics. We should push some of them, and we have to know whom we are pushing and we are encouraging to study those subjects. We said that we have to select certain people who are practicing their religion, and we have to have programs for them. They should study Islam deeply, and they should study these topics. So once they study these topics, because some of those topics are quite dangerous and influential. So, for example, a Muslim may study social studies, and he might be influenced easily by the social principles, the non-Islamic social principles. But we have to be careful. It's true that we want to encourage them, but in the meantime, we have to be careful. It's true that once Muslims are involved in the political process, then ultimately they are pushing for this setup, the multicultural society or a plural society, which might be one of the best setups for Muslims living in non-Muslim countries.
Okay, what about the issue now, which is, I think, a natural issue, that at the end of voting and all the political process, there's a divide amongst the Muslims. And thus this divide itself is not very coercive to the whole goal of the Muslims in the West. How important is it for the Muslims to unite upon the understanding of this political move?
Yeah, this is a very dangerous issue. Yes, it's true that we have seen some Muslims in different places being divided according to the political parties. And this is, we are encouraging Muslims to be involved in the political party, but the last thing we would like to see is Muslims divided or scattered according to the political parties they are belonging to, or they are scattered according to the political parties they've voted for. And we have seen in some countries that some Muslims they started to use the member of Jum'ah to promote their own party, and this is very dangerous. We are saying, yes, we need to be involved, but not to the degree that you think that the only success is attached to participation in politics. No, participating in the political process is one element of success. And again, we said that it might be and it might not. We have to evaluate the situation carefully. There are many different other elements that the Muslim community should focus on. It is not only politics, let alone being divided and fighting among each other because of the political parties in the scene.
Okay, as we come to the end of this episode, can you give us a roundup again of the importance of politics in a nutshell for the Muslim who's living in the West, Sheikh?
In general, what we said, that the aim of any Muslim individual or any Muslim community is to increase the good and minimize the bad. In many situations, we don't have an ideal situation. Therefore, we should be involved in the political process to increase whatever we are able to increase from the good and to minimize whatever we can minimize from the evil. And this involvement should be a strategic involvement, and it should be taken as a decision from the Muslim community or from the majority of the members of that community, and it has to be evaluated carefully. Each community should evaluate the situation carefully, and the community should also encourage younger generations to study politics in order to understand the political game better than the old generation. And the last thing that we have stressed on is the fact that involvement in political process should not divide Muslims in that country, because at the end of the day what links us is more than what divides us. Let alone that politics should not divide us. Is not acceptable at all for the political process to divide us, while the Prophet ﷺ named us as al-akhu al-muslimu akhul muslim, and Allah Jalla wa Ala named us as ikhwa, innama al-mu'minuna ikhwa, irrespective of the parties we voted for or irrespective of the parties we belong to. And we said that there are some areas that we cannot cover, and we cannot come up with an answer for these areas, because these are difficult questions and they need answers carried out by fiqh councils in what is known as collective ijtihad.
Well, Sheikh Haytham Al-Haddad, Jazakallah Khair, that's all the time we have for you today on this episode of Living in the West. I hope you join us next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.